Welcome to the Less Doing podcast, where you will learn how to start living more by doing less.
Let me help you optimize, automate, and outsource your entire life so you can focus on doing the things you love.
Now here's your host, Ari Meisel.
Welcome back to the Less Doing podcast. I'm your host, Ari Meisel, and my guest today is Taki Moore, who is a coach of coaches. He runs the $1 Million Coach business, the Black Belt Intensive, and somebody who I have learned more from since I've known him than I think I have in years and years and years of learning business. So Taki, it's a huge honor to have you on the show. So thank you.
Hey, yeah, man. We're going to have a good time. I can feel it already. I'm grateful for your help and for your friendship. I've learned a ton from you, and it's really nice to be able to repay the favor, to you and to the listeners today.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. But I do have to just point out to people. So I am not as much as I talk about like idea capture with people and all sorts of things, and I'm very big on that, but I'm a really bad note taker. And I'm always trying to 80-20 things, just get to the sort of the nuggets. And typically when I go to an event, I will take a couple scraps of paper or whatever, and I'll write 3 or 4 things down. And it'll be worth it, and it'll be big, and that'll be great. Taki's event, which I attended, I've known Taki now for, I guess, almost 2 years, but the first event I went to was this 2 months ago in California.
In LA, right?
In LA, yeah. And it was the Black Belt Intensive, and it's the first event I have ever been to where I could not keep up with my notes, and it was just incredible. And the cool thing is that I know there's like no context for anybody listening to this right now what I'm talking about, but there will be in a second. The cool thing is that it's so implementable, and I'm such a good implementer, which I can say with really good confidence. So like 30 of the things that I learned from Taki in that 2 days, I think we had implemented about 3 days later. So it's pretty awesome. And so when I say that I've learned more from you than I have in many years, I really mean that. So first of all, thank you for that. But let's talk about sort of the magic of what you do, which is you coach coaches to grow their coaching businesses.
Yeah, sounds a little bit meta and a little bit strange, but that's totally what we do. We typically work with smart, generous, business-focused coaches, people who know they make a big difference in the world and are frankly, really happy to be rewarded financially for it. And we help them to market so they get more leads. We help them to sell so they get more clients without having to be kind of douchey about it. And we help them to take their one-on-one coaching work to groups. So instead of, being able to make a big difference to, 10 or 15 or maybe 20 people max, these guys can now help hundreds or thousands of people. Just because we've packaged their IP in a certain way and are able to deliver it in a way that can scale.
Yeah, and before we get into more of the specifics on that, one of the things that is so interesting to me about your business is something that I talk about a lot with clients in general. Is part of the problem that people have when it comes to productivity is that they tend to switch around a lot between different tasks. And it's what people normally call multitasking, but it's not really a thing. It's more just like rapidly switching back and forth between tasks and making themselves exhausted. And one of the things I help people with that, but I try to explain that if you pull back focus on certain things, you can sort of bucket things together and see that you're not actually switching activities so much if you're focused on this one sort of bigger activity. So what's so interesting to me about what you do is that from the several dozen people that I met at the event, you're working with people who coach, and they could be coaching plumbers, they could be coaching Facebook marketers, they could be coaching business leaders, but you are working on coaching.
Yeah, correct. I think of our work a little bit like I'm the creator of the jelly. I would say jelly. You'd probably say Jello molds. I create these frameworks, these kind of containers for stuff, and then they're able to put in their own, their own content with their own style. And because their stuff and their personality goes into my framework, the framework makes sure that it comes out and works really successfully. But the fact that they put in their ingredients and their personality means it comes out completely uniquely theirs. And so I'm able to work with hundreds of people from around the world in all sorts of different spaces. But because my stuff is a little bit content agnostic, it doesn't really matter if they're if they're a business coach to accountants, or they're an agency that does Facebook ads for people, or they help people with their ketogenic diet or whatever. My framework does the heavy lifting, and they just put their special sauce into it. It comes out great.
Okay, but see, now, as usual, you just put it into a much better frame than I could have. And the fact that you said that you're content agnostic, and that's not an easy thing. That's what my point is. What's so impressive to me about it is like to be able to come up with a framework that is content agnostic in itself is sort of mastery, in my opinion. So what?
Yeah. So
do
you know where it comes from?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. So where it came from for me was I'd been coaching for a while, but I hadn't run a workshop before. And so I decided I'd get some clients together and run a workshop. And I figured if I'm going to run a workshop, then I need workbooks. And if I'm going to run workbooks, they need worksheets. And if I'm going to do worksheets, I know this kind of sounds silly and obvious, but if you're going to do worksheets, then you need little boxes. And little boxes, to fill in, forced me to turn all of my ideas into structure and process and steps. And so if I hadn't have ever run a live workshop, I never would have trained. I don't naturally think like this. I'm very free spirited and probably the most disorganized person you've ever met. But designing worksheets has forced my brain to think now in frameworks. And I've got this belief mantra, whatever you want to call it, that framework before work. If we're going to do something more than once, instead of like sitting there scratching our head, looking at a blank sheet of paper going, what am I do here? We're going to figure out a framework first, and then we can follow it a million times. And so everything starts with, what are all the raw ingredients? Let's turn it into a framework, test it a few times on myself. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll tweak it. And then once I've got something that's, successfully worked for me multiple times, then we can test it out with other clients and then roll it out to everybody. So framework first, then, framework before hard work.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating because one of the most impactful exercises of the Black Belt workshop, which I've done with a couple other people now, showed them at least what we've done, is this is your framework for planning your entire year of content in about a half an hour.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, that was so powerful, and I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I did it, and then I turned it into sort of a digital automated version that we can sort of trigger things off of, which I'm very proud of. But
I'd love to see it. That sounds amazing.
Well, and I have this whole, I printed it out as a poster that's above my desk now. And anytime somebody has a question, it's just look up and I can answer the question because we have the whole year figured out. But I can't give you enough credit for this because people really have to understand how amazing it is to be able to have a framework that general that works for all these different businesses. I mean, it's from a business standpoint, it's incredible for you, but it just, your eye on these things to me is just fascinating. So it's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you, dude. I think, I'm honored. And that particular framework, we call it the preloaded year. It's about how to kind of design out a year in, probably half an hour to learn it, and then maybe another hour to kind of get the year completely locked in. It's something that doesn't come naturally to me at all. I've got an incredibly organized friend called Dale, and about 5 years ago, we were having a conversation at the end of the year about next year and how we wanted to be different. And he mentioned that he plans this year a year in advance. And I'm normally like, what am I going to do on Thursday? I've got no idea. I should probably think about that. And he's like a year or two in advance. And so I just kind of, interrogated him and forced him to show me how to do it. And then after, doing it a couple of times now, I've Takified it and made it a system that I really, really love. And it can be agnostic. It's good.
And then one more thing on this before people say I'm beating a dead horse, but even your matrix for doing social media posting, where you have the 12 posts for the 16 posts, right? The 16 posts for the month, to even come up with a version of that could pretty much fit anybody in any business it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. What they all are, these are like micro examples of a really simple big picture, place to come from, which is we're going to framework before we work. If you've got social media stuff to do, I've got social media stuff to do, everybody's got social media stuff to do. If we're going to do it, we should figure out an efficient way of doing it in a way that gives us both kind of high results and low friction. And so the stuff that I always really jived with your work is that you're all about how do we get maximum possible outcome with minimum input. And you've done that incredibly well with with automation, like optimizing it and then automating it and then outsourcing it if you have to. And what you've done for that kind of workflow automation piece, I've sort of done with how to think about it in the, at least for a lot of our hacks are around content, because if we think about, we want to market, we want to sell, we want to coach to groups and do that in a kind of a more scalable way. The one thing that marketing and selling and coaching all have in common, if you do it in a scalable leverage way, is they all need content and they all need systems. And so I've just got, pretty well built content and systems muscles around that side of things. You with me?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what one of the things that I also think is so important about that is that it's not that you're saying that it's easy, but at the same time, it's not necessarily hard then to be successful.
No, I actually think it is easy. I really do. Maybe simple is a better word than easy, but like none of the individual pieces are hard at all. They're just little boxes. And the reason we make the little boxes on the worksheet so small is so you don't have to like think about them too much or work too hard. If it says what's your name, any one of us could answer that. It's just, we want all of the pieces to be as easy as answering your name in a little square.
Now, another thing is, so how did you get started in this particular sort of phase of your life in this business? What were you doing before you started teaching people how to grow their businesses?
Yeah, great. So I was hired by I don't know how far back you want to go, but I'll go to the thing immediately before. And if we need, if we want to do the history lesson, we could. I'm sure there's other stuff we could talk about. But immediately before this, I was working in a coach's office. He was a business coach here in Sydney. He worked for the, for a business coaching franchise. He was fairly new in it. I think he had one or maybe two clients. I think he had a client at the time. And I was hired as marketing guy. So I worked for, this guy for a couple of years, and it was just extraordinary. I think I had like maybe 3 or 4 years in that network of coaches, him and a couple of others. And every day was like going to a seminar. They held a set of company values so tightly that it was like being in the most incredible personal development seminar you've been in your life every single day. You just get called on your stuff and stretched to grow. It was amazing. And I was there for 3 or 4 years, as I said, and I learned lots and I gave as much as I could. I got really frustrated because the stuff that the franchise gave the franchisees for their marketing just frankly didn't work. Case in point, when I started, I got given a business card and it said, Taki Moore, and I was part of the world's #1 business coaching team. That sounds exciting. So I get to work my first day, and it's this dude's house, and there's nothing wrong with this dude's house, but it certainly wasn't like the Sydney Harbour, view corner office that I was imagining. And he goes, well, welcome aboard. Let me show you your office. And the office is his dining table, and there's a computer and a phone and a yellow pages on disk, phone directory. And my first job, mate, was to promote a seminar, his first ever seminar. He wanted like 16 businesses in a room on a Tuesday night at the local, I don't know what you call it in America, like the Veterans Club, where returned veterans can go. It's like not a particularly luxurious location. And so he goes, well, here's how we do it. You look at this list, you call the people on it with this phone, and you use this script. And he dropped on the table a 3-ring binder with the script for the call, and it was 74 pages of scripts for one phone call. And I was like, dude, that's a lot of stuff. And it was color coded. Like there was blue, red, and some of the text was blue, some was black, some was red. And I don't remember exactly what colors were what, but I think blue was what I would say. Red was if they say this, go here. If they say that, go there. And then black was their lines. And I got really frustrated because the prospects never knew their lines. And so they were supposed to say, Taki, that sounds great, book me in. And they never said that ever. Anyway, so long story super short, I rang people for like 2 weeks to get the people booked in. And, he was freaked out that they wouldn't show. And so was I. So I confirmation called them twice. And then sure enough, on the Tuesday night of the seminar, almost nobody showed up. 2 people came. One of them was my best mate who came for moral support, and one was an actual real prospect. And I just got like completely frustrated with like, what is it about what we've done? Like I took responsibility. Obviously, it was something that we'd done, but what was it about people that, they say yes to coming and then they just don't show? Like it was easier for them to say, yes, I'm coming, just to get me off the phone than to actually just say no. And I was like, there's got to be a better way than calling people. There's got to be a way to have them call us. And so I just got obsessed about this. How do I get dudes to want it to call us instead of having to be chased? You know what I mean? So I just got super frustrated. And then just became obsessed with figuring out what do I need to do marketing wise. I was terrified of selling. So it was like, if I could get the marketing to do all of the heavy lifting so I don't have to really sell ever again, I'd be thrilled. And that was kind of the job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's always interesting to me to hear stories of necessity.
Yeah. It's
'Cause
exactly
I
right.
think
It's just like frustrating.
well, I truly believe that you can't hustle and innovate at the same time, right? You can, and they both have their places. You do one or the other, but you can't do both. And so,
Huh.
you choosing to innovate here is just really, I mean, obviously we've been the benefactor of it, but
Well, here's the other thing. The thing that really made us build our business the way we do. And so like the sweet spot for me, I want to be the best living example that I can be of three things of money and meaning and freedom. I want to do meaningful work that helps lots of people. I want to make incredible money and I want to be free. So we've got 6 kids, 2 of whom have special needs, cerebral palsy and autism and a bunch of stuff. And we take like in March, it was like what, I don't know, 9 months ago or something, we pulled the kids out of school and we hired a teacher. And we've been traveling the world for 9 months. We're going to do it again next year. We're home for a few weeks right now because it's Christmas and the kids want to hang out with their friends. But freedom, right? And so the only way to build a business like that, you said necessity, right? Ethan's sick in hospital. He's nearly died and we're there for 10 weeks. And I've got to figure out, how do I run this business from the side of a hospital bed? Obviously, it can't rely on one-on-one individual sessions. We've got to do something a bit more scalable, a bit more flexible. And that's kind of how this whole thing started.
yeah, and it's really, that's another thing that's so inspiring. It's seeing at the events and seeing your whole family there, and Kia Marie is quite incredible. And yes, and I mean your family. It's just wonderful to see that, and the fact that you're able to not only do this meta work of coaching coaches, but being able to do it in the sort of remote, more free lifestyle. And the other thing about that too is something I teach with my clients is the liberty paradox, which is that there's negative and positive freedoms. So some people are seeking freedom from something, which would be the negative freedom, and others are seeking freedom to do something. And you are clearly in the freedom to do something realm.
Well, we are now. Yeah, originally it was like freedom because we had to, which I guess is a from, like freedom. I don't want to be in an office so that I can be next to Ethan. I guess that was, or maybe it's to, freedom to be with Ethan, but it's certainly very freedom to right now. Like it's, every year we pick a theme for the year, a word for the year. I haven't got my one for next year yet, but this year's 2 years ago we had a really good business year, but frankly it was like a little bit boring, a little bit beige, a bit vanilla. And so last year's word was adventure, and so we went on some incredible trips. I'm a big traveler, and so we rode camels in Morocco, and we did all sorts of amazing stuff. And I was sitting at my local taco shop. Tacos and no shoes are a big recurring theme with me. So I'm at my local taco shop around the corner, and thinking, what an incredible year. It's like, I don't know how I could possibly top this year. Like, it's been amazing. And my brain just went, well, easy. What if you never came back? It's like, oh, so this year's word was nomad, and we've just been nomading around the world. And I have no idea what next year, like this has been the best year of my life so far. And we've had some pretty damn good years.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so wonderful, honestly. And so when you, in terms of your business now, and this, some people who listen to this podcast love to hear specifics on logistics a lot of times. So your team is completely distributed. You're based in Australia right now, but what's your team look like?
Yeah. So I think I could be off, but I think there's 15. Frankly, I learned from a mutual friend of ours, Dan Sullivan. I was talking to his wife, Babs, once, and I said, because she and Dan, husband and wife partnership, they run a great business at Strategic Coach. And I said, so Babs, how do you work out who does what? And she said, oh, we've got this metaphor that really helps. We think of our business like a theater, and Dan runs the stage, and I run the whole theater. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. So in our org chart, like there's definitely, Kerry Marie is like CEO and I'm on the org chart, but I'm sort of off to the side, and there's sort of dotted lines. I don't really connect to anyone. Like nobody kind of directly reports to me. I do my own thing, which is just better for everybody's sanity. And I think there's 15, but pretty much they just wheel me out once a month on team meetings, a little bit like Weekend at Bernie's. They kind of pretend that I'm still there and, and all of that. So what that's meant is, because we are all distributed, lots in the Philippines, several in the US, I think 4 in the States, and 2 or 3 here in Australia. 3 if you count me. It's meant we've got pretty good at working remote and technology and hacks and a bunch of stuff. And I've got a bunch of lots of stuff to share. If you'd like to dig into some specifics, I'm happy to share all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, so I would actually, and one of the things too that really stood out to me was that you were showing us all this automation. Well, you weren't showing. Sorry, no, correction. You were showing us all these different touch points that you should do with clients, such as Facebook messages, text messages, postcards, things like that. And the minute I was reading this, my mind is, of course, thinking about, oh, well, so he's probably using Entreport for this, or he's using this for this, and blah, blah, blah. And then I asked you how you automate all this, and you responded, oh, we just have a VA do it. And it was like a smack in the face in a really amazing way to me, because I was like, oh, yeah, at certain levels, you can just have a person do this stuff. And that's fine.
And so, well, I think automated just means you don't have to do it. And if you just come from that place, it doesn't really matter how. And so the easiest hack for productivity I learned from a great mate of mine, Dean Jackson, was think who, not how. So, what we usually do is we come up with this idea and we get really excited. Like, well, we hear something and we go, wow, that's what I want. And that's why I want it. And then what most of us do is we start going, okay, well, how do I do that? Okay, well, now you end up learning automation, and you learn CRM, and you learn to build your own websites. And like, we've all done this, right? But learning how is always the slowest way to do anything. And frankly, learning who is a real key. And so for years, I've been a bit of a lazy bugger. And so my default position is, what do I want? And then who can help me with that? And then as quick as I can, I want to get it out of my head and into their hands. And they just kind of come back and tell me when it's done, or they ask me questions, and I can be a resource to them, but I'm not responsible anymore. And like, I'm a huge bottleneck in my business if I'm not careful. And so just going, okay, what do I want? And getting that really clear on a specific sheet of paper that we use to be able to hand it off to a team member, have a conversation with them, so then they've got it and it's not in my head anymore. There's lots of stuff that is automated, and there's lots that's done by a VA. But the core thing for me is, my job is to create stuff and then communicate it and then get out of the way.
Yeah, and that's something that I always teach as well with people, is to think about creating the external brain and also having NPA capture. And on that note, that's another thing which I wanted to mention to you. For people listening, I had a call with Taki, I think 2 weeks ago, which was just sort of go over some of my coaching programs and things. Yeah. And you did something that I've never had somebody do on a Zoom call before, because I do Zoom all the time, and to me, it's like the same as sitting at the table with somebody now. You had the screen share connected to your iPad, and you were writing out notes and drawing things out as we were talking. And it made for such an effective meeting. And then you were able to share those with me afterwards. I've never seen anybody else do that. And so maybe it's just me because I am a visual learner, but you are such a visual teacher. Yeah,
I totally am. Well, I can't think without a pen. And so, like, right now we're having this conversation. I don't have anything for my hands to do, and it's all in my head. And I'm like, this is the hardest conversation I've had in, like, I don't know, a month. It's not even that hard. I've only got a little bit of brain space, and I'm not writing, and because I'm trying to be a good podcast host, because I'm new at this podcasty thing, and trying not to have like scratchy noises in the microphone. But for me, every time I'm thinking with somebody or talking with somebody, I've always got a pen and paper. And so figuring out how to do that for Zoom is good. I do it on all my webinars, whether I'm teaching or I'm selling, certainly on every meeting. And it just means we can both be, literally on the same page. And here's what's cool about it. At the end of the meeting, so we're on the same page. At the end of the meeting, I can press, I can touch my iPad and click export, and I can send you the PDF. So you've got clarity. But I can also drop the PDF into Slack, where our team is, in the client support channel, and say, this is Ari's game plan. And the team just knows that anything that's on the right-hand side of the last page, we've got projects, actions, tools, anything that's in the tools or resources column, they're just going to go find the direct link for and send it to you. And in 2 clicks, I'm hands-free. And I think I'm really phobic to inboxes and to-dos. I really don't like, I don't like 2 things. Mostly I don't like other people nagging me for stuff, and I don't like promising you things and then not delivering it. And so it's just I've got to be as close to no homework as I possibly can. And so we've got a no homework rule. If we finish a meeting, I want to be done the moment I hang up, and I never ever want to have to think about, did I do that, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And so, I mean, that in itself was huge to me, because again, like I said, I'm a very visual learner. So for that, it was like, I had to do that meeting with you while I was in a car on the way to the airport, and it stuck. it stuck, and then I was able to get on the plane and sort of work on it, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Another thing, which, and I'm sure you don't mind me sharing this, but you have the 3 quicks
Yeah.
part of your community, which I also resonate with me so much, and that is that you ask people to be quick to share, quick to implement, and quick to ask for help when they join the community.
Yeah.
And it's simple, but it's not easy, and it's something that's so important that most people don't do when they join a big program.
Yeah, totally. I think like quick to implement is, it sounds obvious, but it's not. If you're not quick to implement, then you're quick to learn and absorb stuff and get overwhelmed and do nothing and not win. And that's like, we're in the business of helping people succeed, and so we make a commitment up front to each other that if we agree to a strategy, you don't have to do everything. But if
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, that if we agree to do something, you're going to be quick to implement it. Therefore, you'll get great results. Number 2, that if you get stuck, that you'll be quick to ask for help. And we talk about traffic lights. You're either green, which means you're really clear about what you're doing and you're moving, or you're yellow, you're maybe a little bit less sure of yourself and slowed down, or you're red, which is like stuck and stopped. And we make a rule that we're never going to get to red. The moment you feel a little bit yellow, you reach out. And here's how you do that. And so that way there's like a bat phone you can call to get some help when you need to. And then thirdly, like you said, you go quick to share what's working and what's not, which is how we've got 300 clients around the world doing amazing work. And if everyone tests out something new every week or two, now we've got 300 tests and we share them. Now everyone gets smarter. Yeah, I think that's they're definitely secrets to making this work. And it came out of what makes a client struggle. Well, they don't do the stuff. And then when they get stuck, we don't know about it. And, what makes the community not, what would make a community not work? Well, it's if people aren't generous and don't share. So now we just kind of made it part of the agreement that we, verbally agree on and then, digitally sign on the contract on the way in.
Well, and the other thing that I think is important about that, from a marketing standpoint, when people are doing newsletters or articles or things like that, we always want to have a call to action of some sort, right? Where we tell somebody, like, when you're done, if you want more of this, do this. If you have a question about this, do this. But you sort of, in my opinion, you kind of have a call to action in every single thing you do. And the reason that that's important is that a lot of people won't do the thing that's obvious to you unless you tell them to.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
So, you see, like,
everything is obvious to us and not to anyone else.
Well, if we send an email, for example, we were actually just working on this with the team the other day because we have our events coming up this year, and we're sending out an email, and I think the old me would have sent an email about the event. And to me, it's like, well, okay, if they want to find out more, they're going to click a link or they're going to respond and ask questions. But, it doesn't work that way. You have to tell somebody, if you want in, respond with this, Yeah,
exactly. It looks like it's going to fill up soon. Just hit reply and say, I'm in, and we'll get you registered. Well, you need to tell people. Alice in Wonderland, she goes down the rabbit hole, and I think there was an apple or dude, it's been a long time since I read Alice in Wonderland, an apple or a muffin. It could have been a Twinkie. Nobody really knows. And there was a sticker on it which said, eat me. Like, you've just got to be super clear. Do this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I think that's important, for marketing, but also for working with their clients. And in a lot of relationships, you don't even see that. So that was a big lesson for me as well. So,
hey, I got something I'd like to share. I'm home right now, and I haven't been home for like 5 months or something like that, a long, long time. And because I'm home, I'm at my desk in my office, and there's some stuff that's here that I don't have when I'm on the road that I'm just loving having again. And so I want to share that, like, the 2 things which I find help me do my best work. And one is a stand-up desk. I'm quite kinesthetic, and so the ability to kind of move when I move, I can think, and when I don't move, I don't. So I do all my best work standing up, and I'm sure everyone here has heard of stand-up desks before, and that's not anything new. But the thing that I think is pretty cool about this office is, imagine right now you're standing at a stand-up desk, and off the left-hand edge of the desk, down on the ground, there is a roller, and on it there's a roll of brown paper, like a long scroll. And so this scroll comes up, from the floor to my desk, scrolls right across the desk from left to right. And my tool of choice is a black Sharpie marker. And so I draw, and then I, just like not tear the sheet, like just drag it off to the right. And then I draw some more. So I've got this never-ending page in front of me that is just the most fun thing I've ever worked on in my life. And when I get about sort of butt deep in brown paper, I just kind of tear it off and throw it out. But there's like, if you're kinesthetic, there's nothing like being able to like draw and drag, and it's the best thing I've ever done work-wise.
Yeah, and I saw that actually you just posted a video, I think, last week where you were drawing on that and sort of moving it over. And it's funny to me that it was like, it looks like butcher paper, and there's something very like satisfying about hearing the sound of it sort of like pulling across the desk.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah, it's got this really nice. It's good.
Well, it just reminded me. I don't know if you're a Family Guy fan, but there was one episode where Stewie was talking about something that was like a really great experience, and he was like, "It's like the first cut into a fresh piece of construction paper." That's what that made me think of.
Yeah, that's funny. It's totally that.
And so, so that's obviously one very important tool for you. But when you're since you are in Australia right now, and primarily there, but you have clients all over the world, in the US there. Like, what is a typical kind of day sort of breakdown for you like?
Yeah, cool. So I'm really good at productivity, but not in the traditional sense. I guess a lot, like you are. I'm not efficient by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I don't have a day planner with my to-dos on it. I don't tick them off. I'm really good at managing weeks, and I'm really good at managing years, and I'm really good at managing days, but I sort of suck at minutes and hours. And so what a typical day looks like, I remember reading about is my favorite French designer. His name's Philippe Starck. And if you call his office, apparently this French voice, like if you call his office in the morning, you hear this kind of French accent on the answering machine, which says, here at Philippe Starck, we believe that the morning's for thinking and the afternoon's for doing. So we're thinking right now, leave a message and we'll call you back in the afternoon. And just the idea that you can set the rules up however you want. And so my day typically, if it's a work day, which is kind of Tuesday to Friday, a work day usually looks like, morning routine in the morning. And then work-wise, I do my own work in the morning, and then I do anything with the team I do around the middle of the day. And if I happen to be talking to a client, typically it'll happen in the afternoon. Now, that's a little bit tricky depending on time zones if we're traveling, but generally speaking, it goes me time, us time, and them in that order. And then the other thing that I do is I theme my days. So Fridays, which is today, for me, is Rockstar Friday. So on Fridays are the only days where I'm creating content or teaching content. Happens every Friday. In our world, every second Friday, your first and third Friday of the month is a training day for teaching stuff to our black belt clients. And the alternative Fridays, typically I'm creating the stuff for an upcoming training. Thursdays are Money Thursday. So any sales events or sales webinars or sales calls usually go on that day. Team Tuesday. And so just like theming every day just kind of helps me know who I am that day and not get things too jumbled. It's a little bit like as a kid, Ari, did you ever have like Neapolitan ice cream? Like a bucket with like chocolate and strawberry and vanilla?
Of course.
Right. So Neapolitan ice cream works because there's 3 flavors of ice creams and they're side by side, but they don't mix. And if you leave it out in the sun, it all goes like mushy. And what used to happen to me is my days got all mushy. And now I have like Money Thursday. So sales stuff only happens on that day. And then Rockstar Friday, you know what I mean? It's like a whole day about a thing. And it just helps me not be a doofus, like not kind of completely goof off and screw up my days.
Yeah, the bucketing is something that we hear come up quite a bit, and I do that to some extent as well. So I think that's a very important tool that most people.
It's not for everybody, but like it's just like a focusing tool.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a really easy thing to implement. Honestly, I mean, you just sort of pick what those themes are going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. So the last question that I always like to ask on these interviews is, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for people to be more effective? And you can interpret that however you like. Okay,
cool. This is great. So I'm going to give you our general principle and then 2 practical pieces that help me a lot. Okay, so I think the general principle, which the other 2 are an application of, is frankly to find out your natural productivity style. And so if you're a big picture thinker, do that. If you're a starter, be a starter. If you're a finisher, be a finisher. But like if you've tried everybody's productivity system and it hasn't worked for you, or you haven't been able to stick at it, it's probably not you. It's probably that the system is wrong for you, and you shouldn't try harder and harder and harder at something that you've already, failed at multiple times. You're probably just different, and you should find what naturally works for you and just do more of that. So big picture, that's what I would say. In terms of like practical tools, there are two that, I'll give you three real quick. Number one, for me, is going analog. I'm, we're recording this on computers right now, but I'm a very analog person. I'm at my best at a coffee shop with a pen and paper and no computer anywhere near me, no internet, just getting stuff done. A friend of mine once ran a workshop and like a small group mastermind thing, and a bunch of people came in. I was one of them. And two or three of these guys like sat down at the table and opened up their laptop, and he just looked at them and said, there are no breakthroughs in your laptop. And they closed their laptop and felt a bit sheepish, but it's true. Like all of the great ideas come, thinking stuff through, and you could just, like pen and paper is perfect. So I think number one, go analog. Number two is figure out where you really add the most value. So for me, I add the most value in any process in our business. Pretty much my job starts and finishes with come up with the idea and tell somebody, create and communicate. And anything that happens after that, it's probably best if I leave it at the hell alone so I don't, screw it up. And so for me, I got a year ago as an experiment, I was like, what if I wasn't allowed to I wasn't allowed to use my hands. I was only allowed to talk. So this is the who, not how piece. A lot of my work comes from getting clear about what I want on a sheet of paper with a pen and paper, and then getting somebody on a Zoom call or a phone call and saying, here's what I want, have a look at this thing, and then just like talking my way out of the task. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can get it to hands off, like one of the guys in our program asked me a question about Apple's Pages, word processing program. And I realized that I hadn't opened a word processor in 5 years. I was like, oh dude, I've got, that's a long time, because pretty much the only time I use my computer is to show slides. And so even the way we create the slides is I'm there with a pen and paper figuring out what I want. And then I tell Mike, my content architect, and he goes and builds it. And then I present it. You know what I mean? So then the third tip is, or the third thing that's been really helpful for me is 50-10 sprints. And I totally did not invent this. It's like a Pomodoro, I suppose, is just to get your work done in short bursts. One of a great friend of mine, Colin Boyd, has this idea he calls the structure of focus, which is, great work happens when you've got three things. So number one, a really clear task. Number two, a distraction-free environment. And number three, a set time frame. And so, clear task, distraction-free environment for you might be complete silence, or it might be a cafe with background noise that you don't have to pay attention to, like it is for me. But the most important thing is a set time frame. And so like a 50-minute timer for me works great. 50 minutes of work, 10 minutes off, 50 minutes of work. I think like a good day is like 2 50-minute blocks worth of good focused productive work is a great day. And about 20 hours a week feels like a pretty solid work week. And
so by the way, I also like you, I enjoy being in a coffee shop sort of setting with that sort of hum in the background that you can't really identify something specific. Have you ever heard of the website Coffeetivity?
I just heard of it the other day. I've never used it. Is it like an audio track which plays like Starbucks in the background or something?
Well, so you actually can choose kind of like from 12 different types of coffee shops from and it's awesome. I really like it.
I will check it out. That's awesome. I've been using brain.fm lately as an app on my phone. But I think there's something about background noise that you don't have to pay attention to. So if you're home and your kids are running around, it drives you mental. But if it's somebody else's kids off in the corner of a coffee shop, I just like, and I just get on with my own stuff. So that, I think that the world feels like it's pretty evenly split, people who like background noise and people who don't, for me, that's been a bit of a game changer for me. It means my brain doesn't sit there, like it fills in the space so I can just focus. My uncle was this dyslexic,
but I think that's a good,
and he used to listen to the radio. Sorry, dude. I used to listen to the radio he had like one of those radio dials where you'd change channels and he'd put it halfway between channels. So it was like, and, it was the weirdest thing, but now I totally get it and I really appreciate him for it,
Well, the thing I think is a good point that you made, which is that if it's like your kids running around, it's annoying. But if it's somebody else's and you know you don't have to listen to it, then it's actually helpful. So
Yeah, totally.
I appreciate that. So Taki, where would you like people to go to find out more about the magic of what you do?
Yeah, well, two things. Can I want to announce something, and you could be the first place I've announced this. But by the way, Ari, when does this go live?
Next week.
Okay, good. That should be fine. Yeah, perfect. So, brand new podcast goes live by the time this is up. We've been interviewing some clients who are people we've helped grow their coaching business to $1 million a year. And it's milliondollarcoach.show is where that podcast will be. So if you're a podcast listener and you kind of happen to be a coach or a consultant, an expert of some sort, and you want to grow, then that could be really helpful. And otherwise, if you like videos, then milliondollarcoach.com is the blog where there's a bunch of tools and resources and videos on how to grow your coaching business.
Awesome. Well, I didn't even know about the podcast, so I can't wait to hear that. And
it's going to be fun.
I'm so excited to have had you on. You're my last interview of 2017. So, Taki, so thank you for being on the show. Thank you for everything that you've taught me so far and everything I know that I'm going to continue to learn from you in the future. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, it was an absolute joy. Thanks for having me on and helping me get my podcast set up rushed today so I could get this ready for you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Less Doing podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends. For more information about Ari and his groundbreaking methods, please visit us online at lessdoing.com and on social media at Ari Mizell. We'll see you next week.